Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Creative Finance Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Jen.
I'm Joe.
And today we have Miranda. Miranda is a healthcare professional and real estate investor specializing in long-term rentals, midterm rentals, house hacking, co-living, and accessory dwelling units. Those are the ADUs, folks. She shares investor stories through live interviews on Instagram and co-hosts the Scrubs to Success podcast, where she helps educate and empower healthcare workers to build wealth through real estate. So we are so excited, Miranda.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. You guys are some of the best mentors I've ever had. So thank you. I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am today without you guys. So thank you guys. It's an honor to be here with you.
Well, you're so sweet, but you've got a lot of things going on and you take no excuses. You're making it happen. And you keep the best attitude the whole time. And I don't know, it's real estate, right? It's ups, it's downs, and hopefully we have a lot more ups than downs. But the way that you're still able to go through it and your story, I'm so happy that you're here today to share it, because you've had some things pop up unexpectedly, but yet you're still forging through, finding ways to make it happen and wins. And that's determination and grit, and you've got it. So, I know a lot of people are going to love to hear your story.
Yeah. So let's start out, Miranda. Let's give everybody a little bit of a peek behind the curtain here. Where are you and how did you even get into real estate investing? What is going on in your world?
So, sorry, just getting over a cold, but I am here in Northern California, around 20 minutes outside of Sacramento, around Roseville, Rockland area. I started out, in the healthcare field and quickly realized that, I always wanted to help people, which is why I got into healthcare. But I quickly realized once you're in healthcare, there's a lot of other ways to help people. And so I knew I wanted to invest in real estate to help people into housing, and also wanted to build wealth. And especially because my career as well, it is very high in injury. So 80% of, I'm an ultrasound tech. So 80% of ultrasound techs scan in pain after the first 5 years of their career. So I always knew I needed another passive income coming in. And so just my family was always talked about real estate. And even though they were never able to get into it, I just kind of jumped in. Was I think it was 6 months after I graduated from ultrasound school, I bought my first house. And from there, I actually moved my family in. So I immediately started house hacking that way. So I don't think I've ever paid a full mortgage payment before.
Wow.
The way to do it.
Yep. And then from there, just, living in it, we rehabbed it, updated the backyard, increased equity, and then bought my second house, and then kind of the same thing. We moved in, we did a DIY rehab of the kitchen, and then we moved a bunch of people into the rooms. But this house was nice because it covered my mortgage completely. So, and then this is the house that I'm going to be adding the tiny home onto. So was looking into going outside. Eventually, California was just kind of the plan to build appreciation, and outside of California, I was going to look into more cash flow properties, which I still am, but I just feel like I keep coming across opportunities and stuff here in California that just keep grabbing my attention. And now I'm going to be able to cash flow on my properties here, as well as I think I have close to, just from the 2 properties I have here in California, I think I have almost $500,000 in equity, which is you can't beat that here in California. It's crazy. I'm I can't access it because the interest rates are so high, which is why I'm, trying to cash flow the properties right now until I can access that equity. But it's just imaginary money right now. But I'm
whoa. We got to stop you right there. You are dropping so much gold, and I want people to understand all of this amazing stuff.
Yeah. First of all, I didn't realize how many injuries happened at your job. First of all, whoa, you still have me at that. Cause I go to the doctor's office and I see these people, they're doing this. I didn't realize injury was so high, first of all. So shout out to the techs doing that stuff. But number 2, you had some foresight to see that I'm going to need more than this. I'm going to need to start my side hustle, because eventually I might not have this opportunity to even work here anymore. But also, too, I'm doing this build wealth at the same time, because you're building wealth one day at a time as that equity continues to grow. Plus, you have renters paying down your debt. You get, tax write-offs from the government for owning these properties. So it's check. And you're so young, just getting started, and you're already doing this. It's holy cow. So you're already off to an amazing start.
And so I think that someone that's listening, first of all, like, how do you find the time? So I always love getting into that, because busy people like yourself still find the time. And then I want to touch on the imaginary money. And I think that little bit of mindset would really help some folks out there, because sometimes they think, by watching Instagram or YouTube, it's a get rich quick. You're going to be a millionaire overnight. Real estate is the way, you're going to have a private jet and a Lambo in like a year. And that's not the reality for most of us, if any of us. But I'd love to get into that. So how did you find the time? Like, you went to college, you had some big goals. And so kind of share like how you're getting this done.
Yeah. So before it was kind of slow rolling, just like when I started my career, because I was working so much overtime. And then eventually, as you get more, at least in my field, more certifications, you get paid more. So eventually I just got to a point where I was able to live off of just working part-time. And it was my hours too. So I work 7 on, 7 off evenings. So I work 2:30 to 11. So in the morning before that, I am able to focus on real estate. And then on my weeks off, I am full-time real estate, unless I'm picking up overtime. So I go in phases. So I try to work smarter, not harder. So I'll always try to work overtime rather than extra days straight time, just because it's a lot better money that way. And so just kind of figuring out the balance between that. I definitely did get burnt out. And like last year was really hard, because I feel like I was doing really good at the first half of the year. And then once it hit like June, July, like I had a lot of personal stuff going on, and then I was picking up a lot of overtime at work. So I feel like completely slowed down. So I will say it definitely goes in waves and feels like a roller coaster, because you never know what's going to happen in life. Like, I know 5 people who passed away last year in like a 6-month span. And so it was just like a whole whirlwind. And so I will say that just do the best you can. And I would get really hard on myself. Like, if I didn't carve out the time that day, like to be able to focus on real estate, I would be so down and just in a terrible mood, just really disappointed in myself. And I feel like that just held myself back more. So I will say, do have realistic expectations. Like, you don't need to spend, 10 hours a day on real estate, but even if you can get in, 8 hours a week, even if that means 1 hour a day, like that's okay, because that's still going to lead to eventually acquiring properties. And just say, work around what you have. I mean, what was nice too is that when I was looking into Oklahoma, that they were a few hours ahead. So I could wake up early, like I could wake up at like 5 a.m. and it'd be 8 a.m. there so that I can get started. So before my day even started. So if you're looking at markets, you can always take in like the time as well, because if you're working an 8 to 5, but then your market's 3 hours ahead, you don't get, by the time you get home, it's already 8 p.m. and no one's going to hop on the phone with you. So just, I guess, evaluating where you are with your schedule and just getting in as much as you can. I'd say there's no perfect number. And even if you can't one day, don't let that get you down, and just, try again the next day. It's all about just doing the best you can, really.
Well,
And
that's what it's about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you share. Thank you for sharing that. I know that, it is very, very hard, and all of us can relate. There's times where, health can take a bad turn, or you lose somebody that you care about. And it's all about not burning out and knowing that you can set things aside and it'll still be there. But you're so spot on, an hour a day is really all you need. And even if it's a couple of minutes just to start generating leads, which I want to talk about in a minute, but you're literally painting that picture of exactly how you're able to still be working full time, depending on your hours and the craziness, but you're not, watching a million Netflix shows, it doesn't sound like, or, just kind of scrolling on Instagram or whatever.
Well, she's also like, you're hard on yourself. You have high expectations of yourself. You have high goals, right? You've seen the vision of what you want. You have a burning desire. So you feel like, if I didn't hit this week or today, like I wanted to, like, you are hard on yourself. And sometimes that's good and bad. It's bad because we got to be nice to ourselves, but also good because, like, it takes that type of attitude to be successful. Like, you have to be relentless. You have to be able to sacrifice things. You have to have that mentality of like, I'm going to do this no matter what. I was in the hospital a few weeks ago, and in the hospital bed, I'm still looking at deals, right? Because I'm just like, what else am I going to be doing? I don't watch TV. There's nothing else I could have been doing at that time, right?
Well, that's the thing about what we do, because then I even drove up there and he's like, why are you here? I'm like, what am I to sit at home by myself with my laptop? Like, I just bring it up here and do work from the hospital. So, it is flexible, but it's also just being really aware of your time. So I love that you shared that part of it.
Yeah, because you have to have that attitude and mentality, and you have that, which is like, you already know, you just keep that attitude up in this work ethic, and the sky's the limit, right? Especially for you.
Making it happen in California too.
And I will say, like, it's okay to pivot too, because I was really so set on investing in a property in Oklahoma, but then when everything happened, that almost felt a little overwhelming for me, like mentally wise. It was just like an extra load. So I focused more here in California, and that's when I was turning my bedrooms. It wasn't that I wasn't doing nothing. It was just I was focused more on what I could do. And so even though I put Oklahoma on hold, I was still turning my rooms here, furnishing them, renting them out, turning them into midterm rentals, which increased my cash flow as well. So I will say, if you have your mindset set on a goal and it's just not happening, it's okay to pivot temporarily, because you can always come back to that goal. Just do whatever you can do in that moment and what works best for your work and your lifestyle and your family in that moment, because you can always work up to something else or work towards something else.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you just had some situations going on. You own a property, you're bringing in a tiny home to the property, right? And then what happened with that? The town, did they give you a hard time, or you had some incident happen, but you're working around
I
it?
want to hear a front to back. I want to hear how you found this property, what happened with it. Like, we got to start from the very beginning.
I got all my notes, and I have some gold here. So it's just every day is something new. I mean, even yesterday was just a really hard day, because it just seemed like one thing after the other kept happening. But so yeah, I found and this was cool, because I was looking on Facebook Marketplace for leads. Like, I'll go on there and I'll look at rentals. I've been sitting for a while and mark them down so I can contact them, the seller or the owner, to see if they'd be willing to sell. And I just had one day seen like a tiny home right on there. And I was like, oh, I didn't know people sold tiny homes on there. So after that, I just kind of kept checking, like maybe a couple times a month. And then one day I just saw one pop up, and it had been there posted for about a week, and it was really close. It was only 15 minutes from me. And so I messaged the seller, and she was open to creative finance, which is huge. So when I bought the second property, I always knew I wanted like an ADU on the side, because that was the only way I was going to be able to fully cash flow on the property. And so, but building an ADU, I mean, you're looking at a minimum of $100,000. And so I was always trying to find a more creative way to do it. And so with a tiny home, what was actually really cool is that I think it's only about maybe a year old. They changed the laws where tiny homes are now can be considered in certain counties ADUs once they're put on a permanent foundation. Because before, tiny homes on wheels, they were just considered like RVs. So you could never count them towards the equity of your home. Like, you can't count the square footage. But now in certain counties, some counties are still catching up. But in most counties around me and here in California, if you put tiny home on wheels on a permanent foundation and get it permitted, it is now an ADU, and that square footage is now added to the property, and then it will increase your equity. So, which is crazy, because these tiny homes, these mother-in-law suites, these, accessory dwelling units, all these different names for them, but essentially they're just an extra little house. And it could be for a family member, or, the silver tsunami that's coming. A lot of people have older family who needs, doesn't want to live in a big house. It's extra for them, or college kids, or you can rent it out. And so with this, these tiny homes are selling for as low as like $40,000. So, and that's base. I found mine was, I think, originally 59,000 new, and with no upgrades. And she had a bunch of upgrades, and I was able to buy it for 43,000, and it was half down, half seller finance. So nice. Yeah. So that was the selling point for me, right? I mean, sure, I can go buy a brand new one. So mine was built in 2022, so it's about 3 years old, but I'm like, I could go buy a new one, but then I'd have to come out of pocket 50 grand, versus, even though I'm buying for 43, I'm only putting 21,000 down, probably paying a month or two in the mortgage payments, which the way we set up the seller financing is that we scheduled $1,000 monthly payments for 12 months with a balloon payment at 6 months and 12 months. The reason we did this is because if we just amortized it over, 12 months, the other 21,000, it came out to around, I think, 1,800. And I don't like to over leverage myself. Like, I want to know if I can't get a tenant in there, I can easily pay that myself. And Smart. I just don't like to add extra stress. So I just asked the question. I mean, worst case She says no. So I asked, I was like, look, to be honest, and she was a nurse, so she's in the healthcare field as well. She's kind of, doing the same thing, entrepreneur, healthcare professional. And I asked her, I was like, would you be okay if we lower that to 1,000 and I just paid the difference in a balloon payment at the end of the 12 months? She's like, well, how about let's do one at 6 months, one at 12 months. I was like, deal. Because now I, maybe come out of pocket 24,000 just on the tiny home, and then the rest my tenant will pay. And say, okay, so my monthly payment's $1,000. According to comps in my area, I'm shooting for $1,800 a month in rent.
There we go.
Boom.
There we go.
Yes.
And then so obviously you get her paid back, and now you just got that money coming in already on the property where you're already generating money.
Yep. And so right now it's like I'm breaking even right now because I don't have all my rooms rented, but once all the rooms are rented, so my mortgage on this house is about $3,200, and once I have 5 rooms rented plus the tiny home rented out, which I'm going to do 2 long-term tenants, because in order to buy my next property, lenders will only include income from long-term tenants to be able to deduct from your debt to income ratio. So my midterm rental tenants, that's more of just cash flowing, but they won't include that in your debt to income ratio. So I only did enough long-term tenants to be able to deduct that, so it doesn't affect my next house. And then the midterm rental tenants, obviously more cash flow, and then the tiny home, but all together I should be bringing about hopefully $7,200 to $7,300 a month, and then cash flowing net about between $1,800 to $2,000 a month.
In California.
Yes.
Well, I thought you couldn't cash flow in these expensive places.
Yeah, it doesn't work in that area, Miranda.
I know.
Miranda she find a way to get it done. And I just love your story too, because it's not like you came from this like background of having real estate, like all this knowledge. Like you're like, okay, I'm going to figure out, I could see the numbers, I'm making it work.
Mm-hmm.
And you're making it work in a tough market, which is, I mean, there's lots of other people making it there too.
She's constantly trying to, make deals happen, and questions that she's coming to class with, and maybe we can get into one a little bit later because I want her to finish this story. But yeah, I mean, again, you're like not afraid to ask questions, show up, take the action, and then, okay, this didn't work, let's pivot. Like, what can I do in this regard? So kudos to you, girl. Like, you are just crushing it over there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so for the things that I've learned so far, oh my goodness. Okay. So first off, if you're going to buy a used tiny home that's not new, you need to make sure. So one big pivot or one big problem that I've run into is that my tiny home in California, in order for it to be able to convert to an ADU, it needs to be HCD and IGC certified. So it needs to be built to those standards. So similar to like a mobile home needs to meet HUD standards, housing or urban development. And he has to meet certain certifications. So when the original owner bought it, when I did my due diligence, I checked, it's originally created by Pacifica Tiny Homes. And on their website, it says they're all, they're built to these standards. And so I just assumed that it was going to come with the proof of that. So I guess when the original owner bought it, though, she bought it as an RV and not an ADU. And I didn't realize you could buy it in different ways. So even though it was built to the standards, I have no proof of that. And so when you buy a tiny home, whether it's new or it's used and you're wanting to convert it to an ADU so it can be included in the square footage of your home, make sure it has an HCD insignia plate. This is what a manufacturer provides for the tiny home to prove to the state of California that it was built to their standards and their requirements. Or built to the HUD, the HUD standards. Make sure you have like documentations or certifications that it was built to there. Because one way or another, California will either consider this tiny home a prefab, which is where the HCD and the IGC insignia plate come in, or it'll be considered like a more mobile home, and that's when you need to make sure that the HUD requirements are fulfilled. So, but there's a silver lining. So my city, even though it's been kind of chaotic because there's not just like a simple, check, this is next, this is what we need to do. Everyone's just kind of like everywhere. I had submitted the floor plan and stuff. They said that wasn't enough. So they ended up calling the manufacturer themselves, which it took me 2 weeks to get a hold of someone at Pacifica Tiny Homes. Actually, I had to call the manufacturer of the trailer that tiny home sits on, and they had to give me a cell number of someone they used to work with. So I finally got a hold of them, and that was just an unforeseen venture too, that no one was calling me back. but so the chief of the building department, so I went there in person, and luckily he was there that day, and so we exchanged numbers, and he ended up calling them himself and getting what he needed. So I still don't know if it's enough. I haven't heard back. I'm still waiting. So I emailed him and asked him, is there anything else you need? The person who worked at Pacific Tiny Homes said she sounded like he was content with what she gave him. So we'll see. I still haven't gotten 100% okay. But worst case scenario, if he comes back and says, no, we need this in order to do this, it'll be considered an RV unless you had the Signia plate. Thank goodness for ChatGPT and all of this. I looked it up and I can actually apply for that plate myself. So worst case scenario, I can go and get the HCD. Sorry, that does not roll off the tongue. It's got HCD insignia plate, and I can apply for it. Someone would just have to come out and do an inspection, which hopefully would meet the standards because it was built to that according to, their website, the manufacturer's website. So hopefully that is the case. But yeah, it should be as simple as having an inspector come out and give me the plate. But obviously that would just be a delay in the whole project. So hopefully I don't have to do that. But worst case scenario, I can always pivot to that. And even worst case scenario, if that doesn't work, I'll just move into it.
Oh my gosh. I was going to say, if you're just listening and you're not watching us on YouTube, she's got the biggest grin on her face. So like her attitude and positivity is like, I'm just going to figure this out one way or another. Now, all these letters you keep rambling off, like, did you know what any of these were like 6-7 months ago?
No, not at all. I honestly still don't know what HCD means. To be honest, I know what HUD means, housing urban development, but HCD, I don't. I just didn't.
But that's the point. You don't need to know every single thing inside out. I mean, you're gaining a lot of knowledge, and you're taking that messy, massive action, which is what we always talk about. And so you're just living proof of it.
Well, and two, once again, it comes down to just attitude and being determined. This is how I got my first deal done. Like I think of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, every single time there was like an obstacle, I would get over it. I would get moving again, and there'd be another one. And then I would be like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. And then somehow I'd figure a way to get around it. I'd start cruising again, and then there'd be another one. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. And this kept happening to me. And if I didn't have that type of attitude, like I'm going to get to the finish line, and especially at the point you're at, like where I was, like I made it this far, I'm not turning back now. Like we're moving forward one way or another. I'm going to figure this out. And that was the key. So bravo to you, because you're learning as you go. You're learning by doing. And that's the way that you're going to really become an expert on this matter. And thinking it, like, I would love for you to actually come to one of our coaching calls and talk about this in front of the class.
Do a real deep dive. I know we've chatted about it, but you're usually driving home from work, or you're, just settling in for the night or whatever it might be. But it reminds me of the book, The Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah.
Right. Like instead of like, oh, I'm just going to give up. That's my luck. Like, you're like, okay, cool. That's cute. But we're going to figure this out. Who can I email? Who can I call? And that's the determination and the grit that we just keep talking about, that tenacity. So we just love this story so much. I'm so grateful that you're able to come on and share and inspire others. So again, you might need to rewind it and re-listen to all the things that she was giving you there, because, again, in California, it can be tricky to just buy a property and simply cash flow off a long-term rental. And so you've pivoted and you've got some MTRs, midterm rentals. And how do you like that strategy? Have you been doing that very long, or what are your thoughts? Any insights if someone's thinking about that?
I like it. I think it's definitely a way to, I like the balance. I like having some long-term tenants here, and then I like having some midterm rental tenants, because I'm kind of like medium risk. I like to make sure that my mortgage is covered, but as well as I am optimizing my cash flow as much as possible. Plus, I like the idea of if we get someone in here that maybe we don't necessarily like clash with, or people don't get along, or maybe they're not a great tenant, like they're only going to be here for 3 months, and then I could just not renew. So I do like that idea of being able to test out a tenant, and then depending on whether they want to extend their stay or not, I have that option too. But it's honestly been a great way to be able to charge top dollar. So plus, like, everything we have furnished so far, we have found at like discounts or Facebook Marketplace. So we've been able to keep like the furnishings pretty low on the cost wise. So I feel like it's been worth it, because we didn't have to come out with like, $10,000 to furnish all the rooms. I mean, we probably hit maybe like $2,000-3,000 to furnish 3 to 4 rooms. So it's not too bad. And
my
we just
God.
use a lot of furniture we had. So, I mean, eventually when we buy another house, like I'm gonna have to buy all new furniture because I'm just planning on leaving everything here just because I
There you
wanted
go.
to
Well,
decrease.
let's manifest that you're going to buy a house as is, and it's just going to come fully furnished, because I think that there are a lot of opportunities. We were chatting about that yesterday, where there are some people who don't enjoy short-term rentals or MTRs and midterm, and it is a lot of work. Do you self-manage, or do you have a team in place, or is it just you?
Just me.
Okay.
Just me so far.
So how are
Probably
you staying organized? Do you have any tools?
Google Sheets. Yeah, Google Sheets so far. And it's been honestly, it takes up a lot of time. So I'm probably going to pivot once I get my next property, because the next property will be another co-living property, since that seems to be working here in California the best. So once I do that, I'll probably pivot to maybe like, I don't know. I've been hearing a lot about Monday.com. I know Jamie, is able to set people, she'll, teach people and set people up with that. So I might reach out to her to help me with that.
She knows
But
what
I'll
she's doing for sure.
but yeah,
I think of
so
it.
far it's been okay.
So, nurse, real estate investor, getting creative with your strategies, like making it happen no matter what. Like, bravo to you.
Mhm.
Like, seriously, kudos to you. And here's the neat thing about it. Like, this is just getting started,
Mhm.
right? This is just getting started. And this is what's really cool. And finding creative strategies and always listening to like modern trends, what's currently working, getting them
Mhm.
around the right people, finding out that the codes are changing in the counties, right? What's opening up opportunities that might not have worked before. So you're really staying hip on current events and changes,
Mhm.
and that's how you do it, and that's how you stay dialed in. And this is why Jen and I are very active in our own real estate business, because
Mhm.
things change. The market
Mhm.
could change in a dime. 3
Yeah.
years ago things were red hot. Right now in South Florida it's definitely cooled off and prices are going down, right?
Well,
So
the heat's turning on, but the rental market or the
yeah,
housing market
yeah,
is
it's
definitely.
heating up right now, but the market, right? But that's opening up more opportunities.
Mhm.
And so if the market's going up or if the market's going down, both ways, there's opportunities if you learn how to buy these deals the right way, get creative what you're doing, stay the most into the business of what's currently working and what's not working by getting around other people and taking that action. And so just once
Yeah.
again, that's a great job.
And I gotta
Absolutely.
say too is, just if you are using your Facebook, I mean, you got to just start branding yourself a little bit more. I know it's going to take more time, so maybe we got to talk a little bit more of some virtual assistants to help you out here. But you have a niche, right? And you saw like Oklahoma, it's a newer market. You could cash flow, but like if you're able to really optimize what you're doing in California, then you need to like be that girl. Like, hey,
Yeah.
like I can buy your house, I can help you out, and then I'm going to be able to turn a profit too, which is amazing, and offer affordable housing, which we hear all the time is such a problem. And this is why ADUs, the additional dwelling units in the back, they're really necessary. So if you think about the whole scheme of it, like you're really helping people, you're providing a safe environment for them to live, which we all need,
Yeah.
and you're just changing so many lives.
Thank you. Absolutely. I mean, I do need to post more about it on Facebook and do a little, maybe more shorts and more videos. So thank you for pointing that. I do need to do that because
Well, the world needs to know.
yeah, exactly. And there's just so much, all the laws are changing so fast. I mean, these tiny homes, when you convert it to ADU, they can actually now be considered a primary residence. So now I'm actually looking at land spots in like, San Jose, Sonoma, here in Sacramento, like Roseville. You can buy a plot of land, buy a tiny home, put it on the plot of land and get it on a permanent foundation. And then now that's your primary residence. You bought what, the land for 190,000, between that and 300,000 here in California you're looking at, and then the tiny homes 50,000. I mean, eventually I think what I was looking at was 2 and 2, because here in California you can have primary residence and then you can have a regular ADU, a detached ADU, and then you can also have a junior ADU. So you can technically have 2 ADUs on the property. So if you bought 2 tiny homes and put them on land, you can promote it as multi-gen living, because now you have a family and maybe your parents or something want to move in, and then just really I feel like landscape the outdoors, because outdoor living here in California and stuff. So we're kind of looking at that and seeing how the different ways we can buy land and promote tiny homes, because it just seems like, I mean, you can't beat the numbers. And I will say that what to look at like the whole picture too, so bought the home for 43, right? 20 went down, probably gonna be at 24, 25 in, depending on how long this takes. But because I do need to set up utilities, which, by the way, do not go through the manufacturer, because they were quoting me 10,000, and then I asked ChatGPT for a quote, and then it corrected and said no, it should be under 5,000. I was like, oh, okay, and then I confirmed that with my friend whose husband's a contractor, and he said no, that's way overpriced. So literally almost paid, $5,000-$6,000 of just the convenience fee. So definitely talk to your local contractors first before just going with the manufacturer. It might seem easier that way, but it will save you thousands to do it, to take that extra step and do it on your own. But right now, with utilities, also, here's a key point too. If you are buying an ADU, in certain counties, they will require your ADU to have a separate address. If that happens and you're in a PG&E area, PG&E will require you to have a separate meter for the ADU. And if that happens, you're looking at thousands of dollars, like probably close to upwards of like 10, 20,000, maybe even 30, depending on how far they have to bring the utilities out, because PG&E won't let you do it. They have to come out and do it. So it's really expensive. So I got really lucky in that rock, like when I was talking to the chief, which it was going back and forth. Online, it says that they do require it. But then when I talked to the chief building department, I don't know how to say that. He was saying, no, you don't need one. It's preference based. I was like, okay, good. I prefer not. No. Because the spot was we were looking at, utilities costing, between $3,000 to $5,000 to upwards of 20,000 to 30,000 difference. So that's huge too. So make sure your county does not need a separate address. And if it does, make sure you're not in a PG&E area. As well as these tiny homes, I can actually, now I learned, completely skip permits for PG&E. So I only had to get permits for sewer and water, because with PG&E, you only need a permit when you're getting a new meter or you're updating the panel. And a lot of these tiny home companies build these tiny homes to work off of a regular single family home 100 amp panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get through the process and set it up with the panel that I have. And then down the line, I'll upgrade the panel, just because we're doing co-living. So we have a lot of people in the house and I don't want to keep dealing with like things blowing out. So eventually I'll update the panel, but for now I can skip that. And so now the cost of setting up all the utilities is looking at about $4,000.
Wow. You need to take good notes on everything of what's working and what don't do. So you have your
Yes.
handbook. So you know instantly when you're looking at something, like, here's the things I need to make sure it has, and make sure I'm avoiding these things.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm going to create my SOPs, and I'll create a list of the to-dos, not to-dos, the red flags to look out for, as well as when you're getting permitted, they require a site map. And in some counties, they require the site map to be wet stamped. And if that's the case, then that means it needs to be wet stamped by an engineer. So that's the difference between looking at like a $500 cost versus, a couple thousand. Because if it's not wet stamped, if you don't need it wet stamped by an engineer or architect, then that means you could just basically draw it up yourself if you want to do. I tried. I could not. I ended up reaching out to my friend, Patricia. She did it for me. Thank goodness. She's amazing. She actually owns her own ADU building company, and she was able to help me out with that. So that was super helpful. But yeah, that you can really just go to a drafter if you don't need a wet stamp, then it'll cost you maybe around like $500.
Okay.
So there are step-by-step instructions of what, if you're looking to get into this, it's definitely, it wasn't as simple as she found it and bought it, right? There's some work that goes into it, but this work will pay off, and it's going to pay off for a very long time. You're setting it up the right way.
Well, the point is, like, looking back at it, when it's finally done, everybody will see it like, oh, well, that looks really, great and easy, but like, they don't know the back end stuff that happens in real estate investing. There's a lot of back end stuff that happens. So by doing all of that,
there she is.
Oh, it's taco time.
Oh, so yes, we got to hear. So she has the most adorable Chihuahua. I'm biased because we also have a Chihuahua min pin. But Taco, tell us about Taco.
Sorry to cut you off, Jill. She was like running by my feet. I just had to grab her.
That was perfect timing.
So this is Taco. So we named the tiny home after her. So Taco's Casita. She's my inspiration for it all. No, but yeah, she's 14. She was actually my boyfriend's dog, and now she's my dog too. So she has grown on me, and she's now my fur baby. But she is a survivor. She survived a kidney removal surgery and tumor removal surgery beginning of the year. So she's had it rough, but you can't even see the scar now. So she's thriving.
But yeah, it's definitely, she ties that into her Instagram, which I definitely want you to share for people because you gave a adorable tour of Tacos Castita. You share what you're doing, and you have an Instagram live that you've been doing with other investors. So where can people find you on Instagram?
Yeah, so my Instagram is just my name. So it's just Miranda.Widmeyer, or you can find me on Facebook. I'm better at responding to DMs on Instagram, but you can definitely try to message me on Facebook as well. I'm getting better at checking those messages. And then, yeah, I feel like that'd probably be the best way to get a hold of me or to check out my videos. I also have a YouTube channel. Again, just my name. I keep it simple for you guys. Miranda.Widmeyer on YouTube, where I post all the lives. And then the YouTube channel for the healthcare workers channel, the Scrubs to Success, as well. We post our videos, and our Facebook community as well, Scrubs to Success, where we really just kind of share our stories and help other healthcare professionals try to, expand and, learn how they can build wealth and how they don't have to just rely on their 9 to 5.
We obviously love that. And, there's something about healthcare workers. I think it's the patience that you have to endure for your patients that you see, that you guys have the calmness about you. You can handle every situation, not freak out and get all emotional about every little bump along the way with real estate, because it can be trying, as you've just heard her story at times. So, oh, that's so awesome. We're going to leave all of that below in the show notes so you guys can connect with Miranda, and we're definitely going to have you back when you've got another story, some more deals to talk about, because man, you've got so much inspiration behind you and you're doing it all. So kudos to you. Congratulations again. We're super excited to see you fill that house.
Yeah. And you know what? I love following. I love watching. I love seeing what you're doing. And so I'm sure you're going to have a lot of listeners who are listening to this are going to start following you too. And you should, because it's really neat to see you getting creative the way you're doing it and what you're doing. So Miranda definitely puts it out, the content, and shares.
And she's real. You're just real, like down to earth. Like it gets hard. I get a little burned out, and then you just set your expectation and get back in the game.
And that's why we love having you as part of the Creative Finance Playbook community, because, you're inspiration to so many folks inside the group, and they see what you're doing. And, it goes on in the WhatsApp channel. It goes on during the meetings. Some of you're not even on, but they're like, oh, did you see what she, like, it's cool to see. So, continue to do what you're doing and continue to inspire and give back, and you're doing all of those things. So great job, Miranda. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I mean, I got to give a shout out to you guys too, because I love being a part of your guys' community. Honestly, your guys' calls 5 days a week, which, by the way, that's amazing. I don't know if you guys know this, but not a lot of coaching programs do that, where they have phone calls available 5 days a week. But honestly, it was just really nice, because especially in the days where I was really struggling, sometimes I would just hop on and just hearing your guys' enthusiasm and optimism and just being so, I don't know, just happy and real and friendly people. It was just always such a breath of fresh air. So it really kept me going on the days where I felt like I just didn't want to go anymore. So thank you guys. You've helped me in more ways than you realize. So, and I love being a part of your community. So thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. Now you're going to make me cry.
Well,
we don't know always what goes behind the Zoom screen, right? And so people are showing up. Sometimes people are hurting. Things are happening. And so we know that. We live life. And so we just try to show up as our authentic selves. So I'm glad that you stuck with it, because look where you are today.
Thank you. And thank you to you guys. Thank you for always being authentic and real. It's really refreshing.
What you see is what you get. So until next time, everybody, thanks for tuning in, and make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a review here on Spotify or Apple, and we'll be back next week for another episode. Bye, guys.
See you guys.